When I walked into the room, wearing my best ivory dress and a trembling smile, every conversation in the house went still. Glasses hung midair, smiles froze, all eyes locked on the bruise that pulsed dark and swollen beneath my left eye, a vivid shade of purple no foundation could conceal. My birthday party, my home, my humiliation. The silence was deafening, thick with unanswered questions. I could feel their stares crawling over my face, examining the wound that said more than words ever could. Then he broke the silence, not with comfort or concern, but with cruel pride. Marcus, my son, my own son, stepped forward and said clearly, it was my wife who put her in her place, so she'd learn some respect. Behind him, standing tall and satisfied, was Tessa, my daughter-in-law. Her posture was perfect, her smile wicked and small, like poison hidden in sugar. She didn't look at me like a person, she didn't even look at me like a rival. Her eyes said one thing, you're nothing. My brother Elijah, standing near the fireplace, looked at Marcus in disbelief. His words cut through the tension with a weight I didn't understand, words that would change everything. That day I lost my son, but I also found something far more precious. I found myself. Let me tell you how I got here, to this unbearable moment of public shame, because this didn't start with a slap. It started years before, with smiles too sweet and words too soft, with intentions wrapped in silk but burning like acid underneath. 3 years earlier. When Franklin died, my world stopped. We had been married for 42 years, long, rich, memorable years full of love, fights, pride, laughter, and the quiet comfort of familiarity. And then one winter morning, he was just gone, a massive heart attack in his sleep. One minute we were 2 bodies under warm covers, and the next I was reaching across a pillow that would forever be cold. The grief was a wave threatening to devour me. I cried in the shower where no one could hear. I cried while stirring soup in the kitchen we'd built together, and I cried sitting in bed, hugging his shirts just to smell him again. But I stayed strong because Marcus, my son, had lost his father too. Our home, our fortress, stood like a silent witness to the life we'd built. 2 stories, bright windows, flowers Franklin had planted in the yard, everything in it breathed his memory. Franklin had made sure to leave it in my name before he passed. It's all yours, Alina, he'd told me. Don't let anyone take what we built. At the time, I didn't understand the urgency in his words. Marcus stayed after his father's death. I'm not going to leave you alone, Mom, he told me. He still left early for work, he worked construction, but he always came back tired, hungry, and smiling. We made a life, just the 2 of us, quiet evenings with takeout, Sundays filled with old movies and echoing memories of Franklin's jokes. I cooked his favorite meals and he fixed the things that broke. We laughed, we remembered. We survived grief like 2 people holding the same photograph, fingers touching at the center. But nothing stays the same forever. Then came Tessa. He met her at a conference. She walked into my house in heels more expensive than my groceries, with dark, glassy hair and nails sculpted like museum pieces. Her smile was wide, white, blinding. Mrs. Jenkins, Marcus talks about you so much, she said, with the smoothness of a practiced sales pitch. It's a pleasure to meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man. I wanted to like her, I really did. I even made a special dinner, baked chicken with roasted spices, fresh salad, and warm cornbread from Franklin's recipe. But Tessa barely ate. She pushed spinach leaves around her plate and glanced at the bread like it was a health hazard. I barely eat grains, she said sweetly, brushing back her perfect hair. You have to take care of yourself, right? She smiled, warm maybe, but I felt the chill behind it. She started visiting more often. Every few days turned into every evening. She smiled, complimented the decor, laughed at my jokes, but behind her eyes something watched. She'd run her fingers along our furniture, the same set Franklin and I had chosen from a dusty warehouse 30 years ago, and say softly, "This is so classic. I bet they don't make these styles anymore, She'd glance at the family pictures. It's sweet, Alina, all these memories, but you know, sometimes we have to let go of the past to make space for tomorrow. Marcus didn't notice, or maybe he didn't want to, he was in love, bewitched. Whenever I tried to raise concerns, he looked at me like I was the bitter cliché of a jealous mother. Tessa's just trying to help, Mom. She's used to organizing everything, it's her job. His voice was gentle, patronizing. I said nothing. I swallowed my instincts and smiled for the sake of peace. 6 months later, they were married. More than just a wife. Tessa planned the entire ceremony. I was barely a part of it. "Don't worry, Mrs. Jenkins," she told me. "I've got this covered, you just relax." And I did, because I didn't want to be that mother, the one who clings too hard and ruins everything. After their honeymoon, Tessa moved in. "It's temporary," Marcus assured me, "just until we find our own place." I believed him. He was my son. How could I say no? But temporary turned into forever. Soon she was redecorating, reorganizing, inviting friends over. I remember the first party she hosted in my living room. Strangers laughed on my couch, drank wine near Franklin's bookshelves, used coasters I didn't recognize. When I walked in, the noise quieted. "Mom," Marcus said quietly, "don't you want to go rest?" That night I went upstairs, not because I was tired, but because I was no longer wanted in my own home. Can you imagine being a stranger in your own house, feeling each object being replaced, each conversation becoming private, doors closing everywhere you once belonged? That was beginning of the exile. And it hadn't even truly begun. When Tessa moved in, she did so like sunlight creeping through a half-closed window, subtle, natural, unstoppable. One day she arrived with a single suitcase. The next, her clothes filled the hallway closet. A week later, her jewelry box sat next to my perfume on the bedroom dresser, and almost overnight, the home I had built over decades became a canvas for her vision, her rules, her control. "It's just temporary, Mom," Marcus said, sipping his coffee with that same distracted ease he'd started cultivating. "We'll find our own place soon." But months passed, 2, then 6, and still they stayed. By that time, my kitchen, had been rearranged twice over. My spices moved from their labeled jars to glass containers that looked elegant, but made me forget which was cumin and which was coriander. The mugs Franklin and I picked years ago, boxed and replaced with matching ceramic sets from some trendy catalog Tessa loved. And the curtains, the ones Franklin had hung himself in the living room, the ones that caught sunlight just the right way every morning, those were taken down without a word. In their place, stark gray panels. "More modern," she told me. "You'll get used to it." But I didn't want to get used to it. The parties. Then came the parties. Every Friday seemed to turn into a social event. People I didn't know filled the space with their laughter and wine-scented conversations. They brought in the sound of strangers and left with pieces of my peace. When I entered the room, their heads would turn, not in welcome, not in warmth, but in vague discomfort. That awkward pause, like I was furniture that had started speaking. "Mom, don't you want to get some rest?" Marcus would whisper. "You must be tired." No, I wasn't tired. I wasn't old enough to be useless, but I nodded anyway, and I left the room, every step heavy with shame I didn't deserve. In time, I noticed the guests no longer smiled at me. Some didn't even know who I was. One evening, I walked into the kitchen during a party, and one of Tessa's friends looked at me with puzzled politeness. Oh, I didn't know anyone else lived here. Tessa appeared behind her, glass in hand. "Oh, this is Elena, Marcus's mother. She lives here." The way she said it, like I was a tenant overstaying my lease. Becoming a ghost. Soon, laughter stopped, including me. Meals were rushed. Marcus and I stopped eating together. He began dining with Tessa in the main dining room, the same place we used to sit for Sunday dinners, just the two of us. I'd hear their voices echoing through the door, soft, intimate, as I ate alone in the kitchen. I had become a ghost in my own home, unseen, uninvited, unheard. One night I found a candle left on my kitchen counter. A delicate label read "Linen Breeze." Next to it, a note in Tessa's elegant handwriting. "Please light this after you cook. The food smell lingers." I was cooking stew, Marcus's favorite, Franklin's recipe, the same meal I'd made for years. Old food, she called it a week later when I had left a plate for Marcus. The living room incident. One Saturday, I entered the living room while they were watching television. I wanted to ask Marcus something, just a small question about the grocery list, but before I could speak, Tessa turned to me with that familiar tight smile. "Eleanor, could you knock before coming in? We might be in the middle of a private conversation." I stood there, keys still in hand. "This is my house." "Of course," she said, eyes gleaming. "But we all live here now. Boundaries help create harmony." Boundaries, she spoke like someone assigning walls, agendas, authority. The late-night conversation. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I tiptoed downstairs for a glass of water. The hallway was silent, but soft light shone from under the door to the den. It was open just a crack, and I paused when I heard Marcus and Tessa talking inside. "We can't go on like this," she was saying softly. "This house is too cramped. Eleanor needs something smaller, more suitable for her stage of life." I couldn't move, my feet were stones. "There are some lovely senior places, safe, modern, full of people her age. Think how much happier she'd be, and we'd finally have our own space, our privacy." Silence. Then Marcus let out a long, tired sigh. "I don't know, Tess, she's my mother." A pause, a heartbeat, my heart. "I can't just kick her out." Tessa laughed, a soft, musical sound that matched nothing inside her. "We're not kicking her out, love. We're just setting her up for independence." Independence, that's what they called it. I turned and climbed the stairs without another word, my hands shaking, my chest hollow. I cried into my pillow that night, teeth clenched against the sound. I couldn't let them hear me. I couldn't let them know how deep they'd cut. The shifting distance. From that night on, everything felt cold. Marcus was always working. When I did see him, he was distracted, short-tempered. Tessa ran the house like it was hers, changing things, removing things, setting down unspoken laws. "Don't use the washer after 7, she'd say. "It vibrates too much downstairs." "Don't rearrange the pantry. I've labeled it for accessibility." She would smile, of course, but it was the kind of smile a chess player gives when they already have you in checkmate. One morning, I tried to speak to Marcus before he left for work. "Son, we need to talk." He looked up from his phone briefly. "What's wrong, Mom?" I feel like I'm not welcome here anymore, like I have to tiptoe around everything. I don't know what to do." He sighed impatiently, like an exhausted father correcting a child. "Tessa is trying, Mom. Maybe you just need to be more flexible." Flexible. It's not personal. But it was personal. He kissed my forehead absent-mindedly and left, briefcase in hand. The silence after the door closed felt louder than anything. A stranger named Eleanor. A week passed, another dinner party, another Friday night. Tessa bustled around like a hostess on national television. Elegant platters, sparkling champagne, shiny people with perfect hair and polished small talk. I stayed in the background, unacknowledged, an afterthought. Then something happened. One of Tessa's guests, an elegant woman with golden earrings, glanced at me with faint curiosity. "Oh, I didn't know the cleaning lady was invited." Before I could answer, Tessa appeared behind her again. No, this is Eleanor." A smile, pause. "My husband's mother, she's here." That phrase again, she's here, like a vestigial tale, a mistake the house hadn't been able to shake off. I went upstairs that night without saying a word. I skipped dessert and dignity. I used to walk from one end of this house and feel warmth in every wall, in every creak of the stairs, every scratch on the floorboard Franklin used to curse when he tripped over it. Now I only felt cold spaces and whispers behind closed doors. And the whispers were getting louder. There is a kind of heartbreak that doesn't come in one great blow. It comes in grains. Like everyday sand filling your shoes, your pockets, your clothes, slowly. Until one day you're drowning in it. That's how it felt in my own home. The house Franklin and I bought brick by precious brick, now no longer mine. At least not in the ways that mattered. By the time autumn rolled around, the house had become a museum of changes I never approved. Gone were the little decorative plates Franklin brought back from Europe during our anniversary trip. Gone, too, was the cozy armchair I used to sit in by the window during my morning tea. It had been moved to the attic. It didn't match the overall aesthetic, Tessa said lightly, sipping sparkling water in the new white and gold armchair she bought online. Design is about letting go. Letting go of what? Of memories. Of love. Of my life. We want to renovate. It started with the kitchen. One afternoon, I walked in and saw Tessa scrolling through Pinterest on her tablet. "We need to modernize this kitchen," she said without even looking up. "A fresh layout, sleek cabinets, a central island would really open up the space." Then she turned to Marcus, casually throwing out words I thought I'd never hear. "We could invest about $50,000, maybe more. The property value would double, and if we ever decide to sell." Sell. Just one heavy word, but heavy as an earthquake. I stood there, a dish towel in my hand, staring at the woman who stood in the kitchen my late husband built by hand. The woman who moved my things without asking, who left candles to mask the scent of my food, now talking about selling my home. "Worse," she said, "we." I waited until she left the room. "Marcus," I said carefully. "This is my house, you remember that, right?" He nodded like a teenager caught half listening. Of course, no one's saying otherwise. But his words were flat, toneless. Like he was tired of reminding me I mattered. Subtle battles. The house became a place of cold war, passive but constant. I would find Tessa rearranging books Franklin had alphabetized. She replaced the family photo on the hallway table, the one of me, Marcus, and Franklin in Central Park, with a black and white artsy photo of a coffee mug from a cafe in Paris. I moved it back. She replaced it again. We never spoke of it. Another day I made lasagna for dinner. Marcus came home late. Tessa told him they'd already eaten. The lasagna was still warm on the counter. He didn't even ask. Like I had become invisible. I started eating alone at odd hours, quiet meals, no candlelight like before, just me and the echo of what our family used to be. The worst conversation. Then came the phone call. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I don't think she meant for me to. But I had walked past the home office door to grab my sewing kit, and there she was, Tessa, on the phone with someone. Her voice was clear, unbothered. "No, she's still here. I know, it's exhausting." A pause, then a laugh, sharp, cold. "Eventually we'll need the space. Marcus is almost there, just needs a little push. She can't be here when we have kids. I'm not raising a baby with some old woman 3 doors down, no offense." She laughed again. "We'll convince her, gently if we can, forcefully if we must." I stopped breathing. She never saw me. I stood there, frozen, bile rising in my throat, my knees weak. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about erasing me. Not from the house, from their life. I waited 3 days before trying to speak to Marcus. We were in the backyard. He was repairing one of the stepping stones, the same ones Franklin had laid down after his retirement, proud and smiling like a schoolboy. I crouched beside him. "Marcus, do you want me to leave?" He looked at me, really looked. And for a second I saw hesitation, a crack. "Why would you say that?" "Because I hear what's said around me, even when you think I don't." He put down the stone. "This situation isn't working for anyone. Tessa's uncomfortable, and you're not happy either. So your solution is what? To make me someone else's responsibility. He didn't answer. The silence between us was longer than all the words that came before. The birthday. Then came my birthday. 70 years, 70. A life full of so much laughter, struggle, love, sacrifice. I didn't expect a celebration, just kindness, a card, maybe dinner, something warm. But Marcus insisted. You deserve a celebration, Mom. A part of me softened. Maybe after everything they saw me again, maybe this would be the bridge back. Tessa took over the party planning. She redecorated the entire living room with silver and white. There were no old photos, no albums, no family relics. It didn't feel like a party meant for me, it felt like a pop-up gallery for strangers. But I hoped. I dressed in ivory, the same dress Franklin used to compliment. You look more graceful than the moonlight, he'd say. I stood in the mirror staring at my reflection, soft wrinkles, familiar sadness. I was ready to forget all the cold glances, the muffled laughter, the rearranged furniture, just for one night. That morning, the morning of my birthday, I came downstairs. Tessa was in the kitchen, on the phone again. When she saw me, she hung up quickly, no smile. Good morning, Elena. Good morning, big day, I said, hopeful, trying. She stared at me and then, bluntly. Yes, also a day for decisions. What kind of decisions? One's about your future. Marcus and I need the house. You need something more suitable for someone your age. I stood still. Tessa, this is my home. She smiled, the small, poisonous smile I'd come to dread. For now. I walked away without saying a word. Straight to my room. My hands were shaking, my chest felt hollow yet burning. I stared at the old photo of Franklin and me on our wedding day. Two young people who built so much. And now they wanted to take it all. That afternoon, I clenched my teeth and got ready for the party anyway. Ivory dress, small curl in my hair, chin lifted. But I had no idea of the blow still coming. Because birthday candles weren't the only thing meant to be extinguished that night. The final betrayal would take place. Under bright balloons and polite applause. There are some humiliations that don't happen in private. They are crafted, designed for a crowd. For impact, for maximum pain. Mine came on the day I turned 70. The day that should have been about family, a celebration of the life I'd lovingly built. Became the day I watched it all unravel, one thread at a time. Setting the stage for shame. The house gleamed, silver balloons arched across the entryway, a banner hung from the living room's ceiling. Happy 70th, Elena. The fonts were elegant, the colors were beautiful, but the soul was hollow. It didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like an exhibit. Tessa had handled everything. The invitation list, the guests, the catering, the decorations, all chosen without a single question directed toward me. Not one of my close friends was there, no book club ladies, no old neighbors. Instead, the room was filled with clean-smiled strangers, colleagues from Marcus's office, Tessa's perfectly dressed friends. Artificial laughter bounced off my walls and back onto my face. I stood in the center wearing the dress Franklin once said made my eyes shine. Now all it did was highlight the tired slope of my shoulders. Polite appearances. Marcus had kissed my cheek earlier that day. Warm but distracted. You happy, Mom? He asked, already scanning the room, his phone buzzing in his back pocket. Of course, I lied. Because lying was easier than unraveling. All evening, people smiled politely and called me ma'am. They complimented the food, asked about the house, then drifted off into other conversations. No one asked about me. No one wanted to know Alina Jenkins, the woman behind the walls they stood in. They only saw a placeholder, an ornament. I wandered through my own house, accepted gifts I didn't need, and watched parts of my life hang quietly in the background, like a museum of memories no one visited. And then the bruise. The real moment of impact came not from words, but from sight. Because while the balloons were perfect, my face was not. A deep purple bruise had bloomed under my left eye. I stared at myself in the mirror before the party, heart racing. I tried to cover it, of course. Foundation, concealer, powder, layers of false peace, but grief, like bruises, knows how to rise through anything. The black eye wasn't just a wound, it was a story waiting to be told. And today, I didn't have the energy to hide. So I didn't. That choice, may be my worst and best at once, set the room ablaze when I walked in. The silence. The moment I stepped into the crowd, a hush fell over the room. Voices dropped, glasses stopped midair. Shoulders turned stiff, faces froze somewhere between concern and confusion. People stared at the bruise. Not one person asked if I was okay. Not one hand reached for mine. And then the spell broke. From the back corner of the room, my son Marcus stepped forward. He didn't rush to comfort me. He didn't gasp in horror. Instead, he spoke clearly, proudly, loud enough for everyone to hear. It was my wife who put her in her place, so she'd learn some respect. The betrayal cracks open. The silence shattered. Some guests looked away, others tried to giggle awkwardly like it was an inside joke, but I stood there like someone who had been shot in front of an audience. My ears roared. My knees locked. Tessa stood beside him, shoulders back, chin raised. That smile, that same poisonous, practiced smile she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. She didn't look at me like a family member or even a human being. She looked at me like an obstacle, trash on the lawn, waiting for garbage day. I blinked once, twice. No one came forward, not a single guest said anything. And Marcus, my son, he just stood there. Like a soldier defending his leader. Then came Elijah. My brother Elijah had been quiet until then. Tall, gray-haired, a man of few words and heavy meaning. He stood near the fireplace, plate of untouched canapés in one hand. After Marcus spoke, Elijah slowly set his plate down. He walked forward, people parting around him. There was no rush in his stride. Just purpose. He stood between me and Marcus, between mother and son, and looked him dead in the eye. That is the last time you will speak about her that way, Elijah said, voice low and steady. People froze. You weren't raised like this, Marcus. You didn't come from this. Marcus looked away, briefly, then tried to recover. Elijah, this isn't your business. But Elijah wasn't finished. He turned to the room now. His voice rose just slightly, just enough to command respect. This woman you're parading in front of us like some shameful relic. She's the reason half of you are standing in this very house today. She's not some burden, she's not furniture. She's Alina Jenkins. And she bled for this home, she cried in its corners. She loved a man for 42 years and raised a son who, sadly, forgot who taught him what loyalty meant. Silence followed. No one moved. No one could. And for the first time all night, I felt seen. After the party, after most of the guests awkwardly fled, the house seemed too still. The forced smiles had vanished, the champagne bubbles had gone flat, and I was still standing. Marcus barely looked at me for the rest of the night. Tessa vanished upstairs. Only Elijah stayed behind, helping me pick up scraps of birthday paper and dropped napkins as though they mattered. He paused, hand on my shoulder. It's time, Elle. They don't deserve you. You may have lost your son tonight, but maybe you finally found yourself too. I nodded, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I truly believed it. Because this wasn't just the end of a birthday party. This was the beginning of something else. The fire before the rebuild. The storm before liberation. The woman who went to bed that night wasn't the same woman who woke up the next morning. She had been bruised, but not broken. The party ended. The music died, the voices faded, and the silver balloons tangled quietly in the air-conditioned breeze like deflated dreams. Wrapping paper littered the floor, untouched slices of cake sat drying out on porcelain plates. But the words they said didn't disappear. It was Tessa who put her in her place. So she'd learn some respect. Marcus, my son, had said that in a room full of people. After the last guest left, I sat in the quiet living room, nursing a small cup of cold tea. My birthday badge rested on the coffee table, 70 and shining. I stared at it as the silence settled in. Upstairs, muffled voices hissed, the tail end of a marital argument trying to stay private. I didn't care anymore, there was nothing left to fear. Tessa's voice murmured fast, sharp. Marcus spoke slower, lower. I couldn't catch every word, but phrases still reached me like whispers through a cracked window. You embarrassed us. She'll twist everything. You let your uncle walk all over you. Let them talk, I thought. For once, I truly didn't care. The mirror. The bruise under my eye was still there the next morning. Purple and yellow now, blooming like a dying flower. I stood in the bathroom and stared at myself without judgment, without sorrow. I had spent months trying to hide with makeup, with silence, with restraint. But the decision I made that morning didn't need approval. I wasn't leaving my house quietly. I was reclaiming it. A visit to the study. I went into Franklin's study. It still smelled like old leather and dust. In the bottom drawer of his desk was a brown folder. The will, the deed, the insurance documents. I read everything twice. That house, the very floors Tessa now decorated with imported rugs, the same kitchen she called outdated, was mine, in name, in law, in love. She didn't own a single corner of it. And Marcus. He was welcome out of compassion, not entitlement. Something steadied in me that morning. A lifetime of being gentle, of choosing silence, of choosing peace, was reaching its limit. This wasn't about revenge. This was about boundaries. The conversation that changed everything. That afternoon, I asked Marcus to talk. Just the two of us in the backyard, the same backyard where Franklin used to read, where Marcus took his first steps. He came out holding his phone, already annoyed. What now, Mom? I stood tall, my hands didn't shake. You're going to find somewhere else to live. The phone paused halfway back into his pocket. He stared at me, blinking like he hadn't heard me right. What? You and Tessa, you need to move out. He laughed, not a joyful laugh, more like disbelief dressed up in arrogance. You're serious. Deadly serious. He frowned. We live here, we take care of this place. You couldn't manage alone. I did before you, I will again. He stepped forward. Mom, you're being emotional, this isn't practical. No, I said calmly, this is overdue. No negotiation. Over the next 2 weeks, I made it official. I met with a lawyer Elijah recommended. I changed the locks. Filed an eviction notice, legally clean, no drama, a professional letter. Clear terms, 60 days. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply acted with certainty, with grace. And Marcus, he tried to fight it at first. He tried pleading, then guilt-tripping. You're breaking the family. But the wound was already made. He didn't see it the night he chose to brag about a bruise. He didn't see it when he let Tessa rearrange every inch of my life and call me a burden behind closed doors. You broke it, I said softly. I'm just choosing not to live in the ruins. Tessa's exit. Tessa didn't say anything to me directly when they left. No apology, not even a smug goodbye. She walked past me with sunglasses on, box in one hand, her designer handbag on the other, towering over me in her heels. That was fine. Let her keep the silence. I had had enough noise. Days of light. The day they moved out was quiet. Too quiet. The walls took a breath, the house exhaled. I opened the windows, let the air return to the corners they'd forgotten. I brought Franklin's chair back down from the attic. Hung our old photos again. I even made stew with garlic, thyme, and too much love. Let it fill the house the way it used to. The scent wasn't old food. It was home. 1 month later. Marcus still hasn't apologized. He sends a short text, hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need anything. I don't respond every time, not out of hate but out of healing. Some bridges don't need to burn, they just need to be closed off for repairs and the blueprint must be redrawn. I found myself. People ask me if I'm lonely now. The answer: no. For years, I fought to keep everyone else comfortable. At the cost of my own comfort, my peace, my voice. Now I wake up in a house where no one tries to erase me. I read old letters, sit in sunlight, cook for myself. I smile again. Sometimes I cry, sure, but it's not a cry of helplessness, it's grief being aired out finally. That bruise faded eventually. But the woman who looked in the mirror after it, she stopped hiding. Eleanor Jenkins, age 70. Widowed mother, woman, warrior. And the rightful queen of her own story once again.